reaching beyond the borders into the unknown. Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. I am your host, Kel Epperson, and I apologize, everyone. I'm kind of fighting allergies today, so if it sounds like I'm talking in a soda can, that's probably why, okay? So I bet, people are wondering, who are you and what are you about? I've been in the paranormal field since 2000, and similar to the rest of you, I've had different experiences as a child. When I got into my teenage years, I got into watching shows about ghosts, Bigfoot, and aliens, and I was really intrigued. Like, does that stuff really exist, or is it somebody's imagination that came up with this stuff? While growing up as a teenager, I was very spiritual, seeked a lot of spiritual classes. Even when I got into college, I got into a Christian college. So, like I said, I was really into spiritualism and things that were beyond what we can see, beyond what we know. I want to know more about it. I started really getting into ghost hunting, like I said, probably about 2000. I had two co-workers named Martin and Eric, and they were already into it. They were already investigating like cemeteries and abandoned locations. And I remember Martin coming to me one day, just telling me how this location was haunted. And I just thought, prove it. Prove to me that this building is haunted. There's ghosts here. And he's like, all right. So he grabbed our digital camera. You remember the old ones you put in a floppy disk into? And we went down into one of the basement areas, and we took some photographs. And after the photographs, he showed me the pictures, and he showed me these little balls of light that were floating around. And he said, well, okay, these are orbs. I'm like, okay, what's an orb? And he's telling me it's spiritual energy, or claimed spiritual energy that's floating around in the air. And then in one of the photographs, he took a couple that were in negative mode. And as he took the photographs, at the bottom corner, there was a face of a little boy. And I'm looking at this going, okay, you hooked my interest. I want to know more about it. So I sat down with Martin and Eric, and I asked if I could join, and let's get a team started. So we got a team going, and we had a name, and the name kind of, we ran with that name for a little bit for the team, and then we found out another group in another state, ran by a bunch of juveniles, had the same name. And apparently they were getting into abandoned locations illegally, doing things they weren't supposed to do. At the time, MySpace was real big, and we just noticed, oh my gosh, these guys are getting such bad criticism, people talking smack about them. Me, Martin, and Eric decided we need to change the name. We changed the name, and we went with Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. And so if you ever heard of the name, it's actually from that group. Recently, the group fizzled out, and a lot of it is because life gets in the way. I moved on to a different team, and they're more of a paranormal research team. Martin and Eric's group was more of a spiritual team. With me, I want more scientific base out of it. The spiritual side is interesting, but I need concrete facts, because I know there's more out there besides just running with it. Like, oh, I hear a bump, it must be a ghost. So, like I said, with life getting into the way, the group folded, and, people went on their way to different groups. So, Martin decided he was going to hand the name over to me, him and Eric. So currently I have the name. A lot of people were freaking out, because they're like, when they heard I got the name, a lot of groups assumed, oh my gosh, Kel's going to leave his current group and he's going to run and start his own paranormal group. That's not going to happen. Maybe later on down the road I may start my own group, but currently I'm with one of the best groups out there, and we're doing great. The team's running smooth, and we're getting a lot of compliments, getting a lot of good clients. Yeah, I'm not ready to jump ship, so we just settled that. Okay, so let's what do you think a ghost is? Well, a ghost is a spirit or the energy left behind of something that was living, okay? Now that can be a person or it could have been an animal. But it's that theory, it's the energy that's inside of us that we make, that we produce, that lingers behind. Now with ghosts, I want to make sure everybody is open-minded when they listen to the show, because let's be serious. There is no way of proving ghosts exist. If there was a way we could prove ghosts exist, then we wouldn't be doing what we're doing by investigating and trying to prove that they exist, or try to disapprove that they exist. So on the show, like I said, I'll have different guests, different speakers, and they'll either be from paranormal research teams, different ghost hunter teams. Like I said, it may be their owners. I want equipment techs to come in and talk about how they use the equipment. They're going to be from both sides of the spectrum, okay? With ghost hunting teams, you got spiritual teams, and with spiritual teams, they have psychics, mediums. They're really in tune with the energy around them to sense out spirits and try to communicate with them that way. And then you got scientific teams that want to be hardcore into proving that the phenomena either exists or it doesn't exist. Now, a true scientific team will try to disprove everything. And you're probably wondering, Kel, that doesn't make sense. You're a ghost hunter, you're a paranormal researcher, you're supposed to be proving that ghosts exist. Well, guys, I'm going to tell you, okay, this is how it works. To find the paranormal, you must disprove the normal. And you're going to be like, Kel, how do you do that? Well, basically, if you're on an investigation, you just don't assume every little tap, every little noise is a ghost. Yeah, I can walk into a abandoned location and hear, what was that? Did you hear that? Whoa, what was that? Guys, you have to disprove the normal to find the paranormal, okay? If a noise is consistent, okay, that doesn't mean it's a ghost, okay? It could be the building settling, it could be some co-host tapping the table, okay? But yeah, like I said, you gotta disprove, you have to eliminate the normal to find the paranormal, okay? So, but on the show we're gonna have different people with different religious beliefs. Now, I want you to be open-minded. Now, I'm sure a lot of you, this is America, so everybody's got different religious beliefs, and that's awesome, okay? So, I'm going to try to have different people on here, because I truly believe that every religion taps into the paranormal one way or another. And just studying, every religion believes in life after death. A lot of religions are similar, background stories and stuff. But, like I said, I want everyone to be open-minded, okay? Just be open-minded, because everybody's got a different belief. Listen to each side and make your own decisions, okay? In the paranormal field, there's always going to be debates about something, because everybody's got a different debate on something. Example, Orbs. Orbs is one of the biggest things. If you get online, get onto Facebook, you're going to find somebody on a chat talking about orbs. And you got the people saying, orbs are real, it's spiritual energy, we can take pictures of them. Well, you got others saying, no, it's nothing but dust, it's nothing but water moisture. But I want to make sure you hear both sides. People are probably wondering, Kel, what do you think? You got this show. What do you think about that subject? So, I bet a lot of you are probably wondering, so, Kel, I'm into this ghost hunting stuff. I'm into paranormal research. I'm a spiritualist. I'm a medium. I'm a psychic. I just want to know what's happening. Kel, I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in this crud. So how do I get started? How do I get into a group? Well, the easiest way I can tell you is get online. The internet is the best resource to look up paranormal teams, okay? Facebook. If you get online, example, our show is based out of Oklahoma. So I can get online right now and I can pull up different groups from Oklahoma, okay? Each group is different, Yeah, to get started, like I said, you just get online. Facebook is a good place to look. And just do a search for paranormal teams in your local area. And what you do is you apply. People are wondering, well, Kel, how's it work? They have ways of contacting the group, and you ask who the owner is. The owner of the group will do an interview process with you. What? It's not a hobby? Well, I'm going to tell you, the groups out here, it's not just a hobby. Now, you got hobby groups, but depending how serious you are about ghost hunting or paranormal research, if you're hardcore in it, you don't want to be with a hobbyist group, okay? You don't want to go with a bunch of thrill seekers. Oh, I got scared. Yeah, you don't want to be part of that, okay, folks? If you're serious about it, they will run their group like a business, okay? When I joined, I sat down with the boss, and she gave me an interview, okay? I filled out paperwork, I made agreements, and that's how I got brought on board. And I kind of picture it as a job you don't get paid. You put more money into it than what you get. You don't get paid for it, but you do get your research time in. So that's how you do that. Of course, people have the question of, okay, I joined this group and they're new. How do we get equipment? How do you get equipment? One of the biggest problems every paranormal group has is getting equipment. You can either do fundraisers, car washes, and different things, but I'm going to flat tell you, the majority of the time, it's coming out of your own pocket. It comes out of my own pocket. Tons of equipment, and some of it's cheap, some of it's not. But if you're starting off in the field, I know you guys have been watching these TV shows and said, oh, I got to have all these IR cameras. Oh, I have to have this Mel meter. I have to have this K2 meter. I got to have all these gadgets to talk to ghosts. Okay, reality check. You know what all that equipment's used for? EMF meters, thermal meters. It's used to check the environment, folks. It's not made to talk to ghosts. Okay, yes, ghosts can, in theory, manipulate the device to talk through, but that's not what you used it for. So if you got a K2 meter, you're using it to sweep the building to see if there's any high EMF spikes. If you have a high EMF spike in a location, you note that down so in case the team is affected by that, because a high EMF field can affect your brain, okay? It's called the panic box effect. So you don't want a team member standing in that area. But, people ask me, like, so, Kale, what do I need to start off with? Okay. Got your pen and paper ready? Okay. What's the first thing that you need? Well, you already got it, a pen and paper. Hey, Kel, you tricked me. Yeah, I sure did. All right, pen and paper. Next, a flashlight. Yeah, you need a flashlight to get around in the dark and see where you're going, okay? What's next? A watch. Okay, what do I need a watch for? Well, what do you use watches for? To keep the time, okay? If you got a bigger group and you split that group up and going into a location, you can sit there and say, okay, we're going to be in for 30 minutes and then we're getting out. And then you make sure you're out by 30 minutes. So, pen, paper, flashlight, a watch. Next, you need a recording device, like a digital recorder. The best, if you want to go old school, if you can find them, is a tape recorder and a tape. That's kind of hard, but you can go to, I'm sure places like Walmart or Target may still sell them. But they're getting really hard to find, guys, just FYI. I'm having a hard time finding some of the old school stuff. But you want a digital recorder. You can, like I said, the cheapest one's probably one about $35. They got more expensive ones, $80 to $100. But myself, I use the $35 ones, guys. I think they do just as good. Now the team that I'm on, we do have higher priced ones. Okay, they do work a little bit better. Okay. So the next thing you're going to need is a camera. I started out with a regular digital camera, but you'll slowly upgrade your camera. You know, I got members on the team with cameras that they upgraded their cameras to more professional style. But you know, you can get a basic digital camera. I would say probably about between $50 to $80. I got mine at Wally World. So the problem with small digital cameras, okay, when you're using them, just be mindful that if you got big hands and a little camera, you may get some photographs with weird stuff in it, and you find out, oh, it's my finger. Okay, that happens sometimes. But those are the basics, guys. Oh, you know, I see those TV shows and they got all this crazy stuff. Well, you know, just starting off, that's old school, because guess what? You can still get EVPs, all right, and you still get stuff on photos. So, best evidence to catch on paranormal stuff, to get ghostly phenomena, is by photographs and by recordings, guys. You know, if you have a client, with our clients, we show them if we got anything in photographs and our EVPs that we gather. If you get a disembodied voice, boom, you got it on a recorder. Something that you can't explain, okay? But, you know, the more when you get into it and the more money you get saved up, you will start saving up to buy more equipment, you know. I recommend after that you probably get a video camera, something with night vision. But I'm going to tell you that stuff's high. You know, I would save up for it. I think probably the next cheapest thing after the camera would be get you a K2 meter. The old school ones are gray. I think the new ones are black now. When you get K2 meters, I would try to find the ones that you don't have to put a dime in. And I know I just lost a bunch of it. You're probably thinking, a dime? Well, when teams started using a K2 meter, when you clicked the button, you couldn't keep it on. And a lot of the old school gauze meters wouldn't just stay on. You had to put some type of quarter or a dime to hold the button down for you to use it. Now, most of your equipment today, companies have fixed that, so now you can get a K2 meter, click it, and it stays on, okay? I'm going to tell you right now, if you do get anything old school, I got a classic gauze meter. It's the gray box. You click the button, and sooner or later it just turns itself off. I know a lot of you people thinking, hey, I'm an engineer, I'm an electrician, I'll just put a switch on that thing. If you modify the equipment, it's going to be useless. And you're thinking, well, doesn't it still work? Well, yeah, it still works. But if I'm a skeptic, and I found out that you modified your K2 or you modified your gauze meter, how do I know you didn't modify it to get these results? Ah, yeah, you're seeing now. So, with my gauze meter, the one that turns itself off, I use it until it turns itself off, and then I have to turn it back on, guys. You got to remember, with a lot of this equipment, you really don't carry it a lot. Only time you really carry it is when you're doing the sweep of the building, looking for high EMF. But if you're using it for, like, communication-wise, you just want to lay it on the table and see if anything spikes, okay? But yeah, don't modify your equipment. That, you know, if you want to get a skeptic going, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, you modified that to stay on? How do we know you didn't modify it to make it look like it's talking? So, yeah, no modifications. But yeah, once you start saving up, then you can start getting into the pricey stuff of expensive IR cameras with the phantom light to the Ovuluses that run about $300. When you go looking for some of this stuff, I like to go on eBay, different other sites, because a lot of times you can find that stuff cheaper or used. But you got to be careful. Like I said, if it's anything that looks like it can be modified, I kind of stay away from it. But sometimes you can find that stuff cheap. Like I said, an Obelisk usually runs about $300. I think currently the price has dropped. It's dropped about $250, but that's still high, guys. Still very high. So you got your equipment. Hey, we're ready to go. We're ready to go on an investigation. Let's just say that you're part of a new group and you guys have never been out before. So you're probably wondering, how do I find sites? How do I know where to go and do it properly? First thing, guys, anytime you go on an investigation, do it legally, okay? If it's an abandoned location, make sure it's abandoned, okay, guys? Do research. Look it up online. There's different ways you can research to see if anyone owns the property or not. If you can't find any documentation showing that anybody owns the property, I usually like to scout it out during the day. And when I go out there, I look for signage. If there's signs that says no trespassing, no entry, then you don't go in, okay? If there's no trespassing signs, that means somebody owns it, okay? So don't go onto the property, okay? But if you get there and there's no signage and it looks like it's abandoned, it's good to go onto the property. Now, if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what are you doing here? Or you need to leave, or the cops come out and say, you need to leave, guess what? Leave, okay? Trespassing, the only way you get arrested for trespassing is a refusal to leave. I know that's how it works here in Oklahoma. So if a cop comes up and says you need to leave the property, or an owner says you need to leave the property, you leave. You don't argue about it. You don't discuss it with them. It's not the place for it. Say, yes sir, yes ma'am, we're leaving. But with abandoned locations, if there's no signage, if you do find an open door or an open window, you can go in, but never break in. If you get there, okay, there's no signs, but all the doors are locked. Guys, don't break in. You're not burglars, okay? And to my next point, if you go out anywhere, make sure you have your ID on you, your driver's license, just in case you do get stopped by the cops. They may want to check that. But that's how it works for abandoned locations. Any location you go to, abandoned or not, you always want to leave it nicer than how you found it. So don't leave trash behind. Pick up your trash, pick up your garbage. My recommendation is, when you go to an abandoned location, don't take anything from the site, okay? There are theories, though. You may bring something home with you, and you definitely don't want stuff in your home, like ghosts, okay? I don't know if that's true or not, but some theories and some people do believe that if you take an object and a ghost is attached to it, you don't want to bring it home with you, okay? You don't want to disturb it. You don't want to be busting out windows or doing something stupid. Like I said, it's against the law, okay? You don't want to be charged with anything. And plus, if the place does have a ghost in it, they may be upset because you tampered with something. I'll get a lot of people like, well, how do you get, like this location? It's, a person owns it and they just called you up. Well, sometimes you do. You get called up to go investigate a location. If it's a business and it's rumored that it's haunted, go talk to the owner. Ask permission to go in. Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. If they say no, well, thank you for your time. If they say yes, make sure you have documentation for them to fill out. Now, if you're just starting a team, I'd recommend that you get legal paperwork done. That is a big must, okay? Because if I'm a client and I invite your ghost hunting team in my home, waivers need to be signed that says that I won't sue the paranormal team, and the paranormal team can't sue me if something happens on my property, okay? And that will stick in court. So make sure your legal paperwork's where it needs to be. I always say, if you break it, you bought it, even though you have the paperwork signed. If your team member breaks an item in there, you better make them freaking pay for it. That's kind of how I look at it. Sometimes you get them to do that, sometimes you don't. But if you're an owner of the team, yeah, you might have to pay for that, even though they signed a waiver, because you may want back in there. So paperwork's important. Alrighty. Another thing that comes down with safety. Anytime I go onto an investigation, I always call someone I trust to let them know when I get there and when I leave. That way, if something does happen, they don't hear back from you, they know where to send a brute squad to come and save you, okay? The way it works on my team, I'm the field operating director. I'm the one that leads the team into the building. I will message the team owner when we get to the site, and then when we leave, this is when we're leaving. And then we send messages saying, hey, we're all home and we're okay. Okay, that's just, like I said, it boils down to safety. We want to make sure everybody's okay, everyone's safe. Now, another good thing to do is, safety, again, if you can, bring a first aid kit. Go to abandoned locations, there's a lot of glass, a lot of metal sticking out. Some of these buildings are very decrepit, guys, and very dangerous. You got to watch where you step. Somebody needs to keep a cell phone on them. Now, during your investigation, you can't have your cell phone on because it will give you false readings on your equipment. But you want to keep a phone just in case you need to call for help. Another thing with going into an abandoned location, you may not know that it's abandoned. You say, Kel, what do you mean? You mean ghosts? No, I'm talking about the living, guys. When we go into a location, we try to sweep the location. And what we mean by sweeping the location, besides like EMF stuff, we're checking the building for hobos, bums, drug heads. You don't know who's in the building. So when you first enter in, I kind of cough, listen, see if I can hear any movement, hear somebody go, hey, what was that? If I hear anyone in the building, guess what? We're not going in, we're leaving. Because heaven forbid you walk in on some drug deal going down and it makes your whole night bad. So, yeah. Safety, like I said, safety first. Now, once you cleared the building and make sure there's no one in there, things go a whole lot smoother. Tour it with the team. Make sure it's your way out of there if you need an escape route. Another thing I want to bring up is you don't want to run. You don't want to get spooked and run out of the building because you may run into something or into someone and get hurt. We always do the buddy system. If someone gets scared, then we'll grab our buddy and we'll walk out of there to be safe. Home investigations, the way those work, like I said, you have a client, they sign the paperwork. Now, a warning with clients. Now, this ain't all the time, but on occasion, anybody that's into ghost hunting or paranormal research, we do occasionally bump into somebody that's a little crazy or out of their mind. And I've heard of teams getting hurt or attacked by weird people, okay? Safety first. If you get a client, I know here in Oklahoma, if I can get a client's name, I can get online and research like court dockets and find out these people ever been arrested before, okay? But also, like I said, you don't know who these people are. I was on an investigation with the group, and we're interviewing the guy, and then we're looking around, and we notice, whoa, this guy's starting to drink alcohol, and he's got a gun out on the table. We were gone pretty quick, guys, because we don't know what his intent would have been, and, you're going into a stranger's home, so you got to be careful. The majority of people I, talk to, they have legit problems, but on occasionally you get that nutcase, and you got to be prepared to get out of there if you need to. We have a code word. we always say a code word like orange orb or black shadow, something that's obvious that the team can go, okay, they spotted something, we need to leave. And, make up some excuse to the client like, hey, we have an emergency, we'll have to leave, can we reschedule with you? And then get the heck out of there. Remember when you're doing your interview with these clients, if they're saying some stuff that's pretty off the wall, then you may consider not using those as clients. If it sounds like legit problems, it's probably okay. But if they're totally off the wall, like ghosts are talking to them and they're telling them to do bad things, that's probably a location that you don't want to be at. Home investigations, when we go in, I always put a chair by a window. and I put our equipment on top of it. And people are like, well, what do you do that for? Well, in case person goes crazy and decides they want to cook us in their oven. Yes, we've had that happen before. But you know, what if, you know, some crazy person decides to go rampant on you and you need to get out of the house and you're locked in? The quickest exit might be the window. So, you know, you could take that chair, smash through the window, and get the heck out of there if you can't get to the door. And what about the equipment? Well, forget the equipment. You got to get out of there with your life. Okay? But like I said, it boils down to safety first. And anytime you're in a business or a homeowner's property, you know, like I said before, try not to damage any of their property, because I tell you what, they will try to make you pay for it, okay? But yeah, for the basics, you know, always use caution. I get people ask me, well, Kel, what do you wear when you go on an investigation? Well, I like to dress what I call smart, okay? If I got a high-end client, I normally, myself, I wear a black polo shirt with the team name very small on the front. I was like everybody else when I first got into the field. I wanted that black shirt that had the team name on the front and Paranormal Investigator on the back or Ghost Hunter on the back. And I just thought that was so cool, and people know who we are. But the more the more I get into it, I guess just my years of experience, I'm just not that flashy anymore. But like I said, if I got a high-end client, I just wear a black polo shirt and maybe some nice blue jeans. But a normal investigation, plain black t-shirt. You ask, why do we need to wear jeans, especially if it's in the middle of the summertime? That's for safety, guys, especially if you go to an abandoned location that may lessen your chance of getting hurt. Now, I've worn shorts before if it's really, really hot, but just keep in mind you may scratch yourself up. But yeah, just a plain black t-shirt. I would steer away from the shirts with skulls on them, guys. The only reason why I say that is because skulls scare people. If I'm a client and I got something going on into my home or business, and you show up with a bunch of skulls on your shirt, what's the first thing they're going to think? Oh my God, these guys are part of the occult. You think I'm joking, but they do. They think that. Skulls scare people, okay? They think you're part of a negative group. So I don't want people being scared. So just plain black t-shirt. You know, I've always recommend if you're going to have team shirts with your names on it, it needs to be basic black. Reason being is because black doesn't reflect light. So if you're taking photographs in a building and the light off your camera reflects off your shirt and it's green, and if you get a green haze on the wall, you already eliminated, you know, if I'm wearing black, that green isn't for my t-shirt. You see what I'm saying? But, you know, that's always been a big discussion with groups with clothing attire. I think a lot of groups now, the ones that's been in it for a long time, they just want to go basic. You know, basic black, something small on there that says your team name, and they just kind of leave it at that. I'm not much into the flashy anymore. I guess I kind of grown out of that. Also recommend wearing good tennis shoes, something comfortable on your feet, because you will be walking around quite a bit. If it's an abandoned location, you know, maybe thicker soled shoes or boots. We don't wear hats on our team. Reason being, if we're taking photographs and we get a shadow, we want to eliminate the fact if the shadow looks like it has a hat on its head that it's not coming from us, so we don't wear hats. Plus, if you're part of Ghost Hunter XYZ group, you don't want to be wearing a different team shirt that says I'm with team 123. If you get my point, you don't want to wear another team shirt if you're investigating with your group because you're supporting your group. Now, if you're a guest and you're visiting another group while they're on their investigation, I just wear solid black. I try not to wear anything that has my team logo on there. I just wear something basic black or just something that says Paranormal Investigator on it. Just something simple. Normally, you know, during an investigation, the investigation part itself, I consider that the fun part. you get to go to the location and you get to see all this cool stuff and you have all these experiences. Can't wait to dig into the evidence. Well, the work part, I always consider the work part, is when you actually have to sit down and review the evidence. A lot of people watch these shows and they're like, wow, it took them 3 minutes to go through all this evidence and look about all the stuff they got. I'm going to tell you, that didn't happen in 3 minutes, okay? Here's how you picture it. It takes a long time to go through the evidence. I usually give a client and tell them it usually takes us 2 to 3 weeks to go through the evidence. Because it does. Because A, not knowing what your work schedules are, and B, it takes time to listen through that stuff. Photographs, when you're on an investigation and you take pictures, we always take about 200 pictures, double shots, and with double shots you're pointing at the same area and you're clicking it twice. That way you can pick up shadow movement. But we usually take about 200 photographs and we go through each photograph, folks. I found out with pictures it usually doesn't take that long to go through. You're just looking for anomalies or shadow movement. If you're big orb people, you're going to have pictures that's going to have dust in them, guys. So I would recommend, if you're into orbs, you definitely need to get with somebody that knows what they're looking for. For me, I'm not a big orb person, okay? So the majority of the photos I go through, I disregard a lot of it, because when it comes down with orbs, it's too easily dismissed as dust. So I pass over those photos. Now, if I have one that doesn't look like a regular dust particle, I will pull that aside. And if it's questionable, I will show it to our professional photographers on the team to find out, okay, can this be naturally made? And they'll come back with me with a yes or a no. Video, with reviewing video, you got picture and sound, okay? That's a little easier to do because you're actually watching it. It's like watching the TV show, especially if the team's moving around. It does get a little boring when you get to the parts where there's no one in the room. You still got to watch all that. You never know, something might pop up. We were on one investigation, and even though the camera was in a room with no one in it, we did get a disembodied voice, something residual. So that was pretty neat. And when you get those moments when you find something, you get so excited, sometimes freaked out. After processing through all that information, it's like, oh, wow, that was totally worth it. Recordings, listening to a digital recorder is so long and time consuming. I sit at the computer. Here's the deal, guys. Like I said before, it doesn't take 3 minutes, okay? It takes a long time. Picture it. If you got 4 recorders and you were at the site for 8 hours, that's 8 hours on each recorder that you have to listen to, okay? Same way with the video. So you see why it takes 2 to 3 weeks to process all that stuff. It's very time consuming, but once you do find something, it's great, okay? Alrighty, well, I'm gonna start wrapping this up. I want to thank everybody for joining me on this episode of Paranormal Investigations Oklahoma. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much. I've never done radio work before. It's just something I just wanted to get into. I kind of want to share some of my experience. Like I said, maybe the next episode will be a little more exciting. Some guest hosts on. And like I said, each guest host is going to be different. Some will be on the spiritual side, some will be on the scientific side. And we'll sit down, we'll talk about different equipment, different ways of handling stuff. So join us next time on Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma.